Okay, so this is season 1, episode, I think 6 or 7 right now of Money Talks the podcast with Becoming Financially Fit. We have an interesting guest today, a colleague of mine in the YouTube space, Instagram space, that also talks about personal finance, financial literacy, investing, real estate, and all that type of stuff. So I'm here joined today with Eddie Colson. So Eddie, thank you for being on the show, man.
Of course, man. Of course. How's it going?
It's going great so far. So I did want to do a couple of things before we get into the content. Becoming financially fit, we usually talk about personal finance, financial literacy, savings, investing, and we also throw some entrepreneurship in here as well. So we should have a lot of interesting topics to talk about. I do want to give you a chance to talk about your background a little bit before we get into everything.
Sure. So I've been invested in real estate for close to 10 years now, right out of high school. And then eventually I started buying businesses as well as apartment complexes. And now I'm just looking to purchase more commercial buildings and businesses and just work with other investors alongside of me.
Okay. And so you're a real estate investor, business owner, and also a business investor, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when did you really start to get into real estate?
So real estate, I got kicked out of my house as a kid because I was just having some issues as a youth with my stepfather, things like that. So I got kicked out, and my boxer trainer at the time brought me into a house that he owned in a state there. And as I was there, I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Love that book.
Definitely.
And it really inspired me and opened up my eyes to just a lot of things. I was listening to the radio one day, and they said that Rich Dad Poor Dad was coming to Baltimore, and I was just like, I'm gonna be there. Yeah. So I went to the event. At the time I wanted to be a pharmacist. That was the goal. That was the dream. So I was working at Giant Pharmacy, and I was making like $7,500 a year on my taxes. Yeah, $7,500 a year. And the way it worked was seniority. Yeah. So because I was the newest guy there, I couldn't get the most hours. So that's why it was like $75 a year. And then eventually $77,500 a year.
Okay.
So I didn't have much money of anything, but I was very hungry, ambitious, read a lot of books. And I went to the seminar, and when I went to the seminar, they sold us on a $300 three-day course where we come for the weekend and learn everything about real estate.
Right, in Baltimore?
In Baltimore, exactly. So my girlfriend at the time loaned me the money for $300. I didn't even have $300. So she loaned me the money to go to this seminar. I went to the seminar. They breezed past a lot of the things. So I didn't really get
high level, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So, I didn't really get to learn everything about each niche because it was just like, hey, here's a thing called wholesaling. Here's a thing called rehabbing. We got landlords, other strategies that you can learn on how to buy properties and things like that. And that's, as you get questions, it was like, we got to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So at the end, it was like, okay, you need a mentor. You need to work with someone. So we say either work with us or you can work with someone else. We charged $20,000. So at the time,
$20,000. So that's how they get you in. They get you in with the 300. It's not that much, right? Everybody can come up with 300 somehow, some way, just like you did. But then they spring on the $20,000 for the mentorship program.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So the $20,000, they was like, hey man, if you need to borrow money from family members, max out your credit cards, do whatever you got to do. And people were doing it.
I bet.
Yeah, people were doing it. And of course, I couldn't do that. So I was like, I'm going to take their advice. I'm going to get a mentor, but I'm going to do it the opposite way. I'm going to go and find one, through just the grace of God in the universe. So that's basically what ended up happening. I found a RIA. They have a RIA in every city, a Baltimore RIA.
Yep, they have one in Columbus as well when I first joined. And that's a real estate association where you kind of go, you meet once a week, once a month, depending on your location, right? And you just talk real estate. Exactly. They usually have one guest or maybe two guests a week, right? And they talk about all the different deals. People talk about either mortgage brokers will come in and talk or different real estate investors, and they kind of just talk about the area. So It's good to be involved with that if you're really trying to get serious about real estate.
Exactly. And they have tons of different meetup groups, not just RIA. They're probably a more established brand that's all over the U.S. So RIA is definitely like one of the top notches. But there's other meetups out there. Yep. So I went to a meetup. They told me to just go to a local meetup and look for a mentor, and that's exactly what I did. I ran into a guy that went to my high school, and he kind of used to come to our school all the time and give us speeches about like Black Pride and stuff like that at cultural arts, the cultural group that I was a part of.
Yeah.
And so I saw him. I was like, hey, man, like, great to see you in this space. I'm looking to get started in wholesaling because, I learned that you can invest in wholesaling with no money, no down, and that's where I'm at right now. So that's my only option.
Yeah.
So he was like, yeah, I have, there's 3 people that he pointed me out to, and I picked one. I interned at his office for about 6 months. And I helped him, do certain things.
Were you making money as an intern at that time?
No, all free. So I literally was working for him for free, all free. I felt a little used, honestly, for a little bit, but it was a really great learning experience. I would say that I learned more in that than I have in other mentorships that I actually paid for.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes it is that sacrifice, right?
Exactly.
Of just putting in the work, taking the time, right? Because even though those 6 months were unpaid, and at the time it may have seemed like, not making money, they're using me. I bet that 6 months prepared you for the rest of your life.
Oh yeah, definitely. One of the things that a lot of new investors have issues with is talking on the phone. They're just scared of being on the phone.
Yep.
And I had my mentor as well as his business partner. I stayed at his office all day, and I just saw them make calls, and they forced me to make calls, things. So it was definitely a learning curve that really helped me a lot, and it was free, and I didn't get paid anything for it, but it was a huge experience.
Okay. So we'll get into the wholesaling topic here in a little bit, but I did want to ask you, what's your primary method of generating income right now? And so pretty much, what do you do for a living?
Okay, so I make most of my money off of the investments, like rentals. So I have a few single-family rental properties, but
in the Baltimore area.
In the Baltimore area,
Yep.
yeah. But I'm also partners with other businesses. Like I just purchased a share in this business called Ambitious Few, ambitiousfew.co, and that's where I got this mug for. I was giving it to you.
Yeah.
You can have it now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ambitious Co. Okay.
Yeah, ambitiousfew.co.
Ambitiousfew.co. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
so
Thank you.
They have we have different inspirational merchandise like that, shirts, things like that. And it's a really, really cool site. So I was inspired by it, bought it, and now I have equity in that. So whenever we make a sale, I get money from that, as well as rental properties. So I work a lot with other syndicators. I help them raise money for their deals, as well as mine. And then, as we close on the deal, then I just get a cut of that.
Okay. And so when did you first start making your money work for you instead of working for money? Because you said something interesting. You said you had bought in and now you have equity.
Yeah.
Right. And so now that's putting money up front. Mm-hmm. And on the back end, you're making money. It's not a promise of making money, right? It's not a guaranteed stream. But once you do put up that money and you have equity, anything that they make, you get a portion of it.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great question. When I first started in real estate, I was all about me doing everything, mom and pop, making my own calls, doing things. And I think that the biggest thing that helped me get from point A to point B was embracing the idea of teamwork.
Yeah.
And going after bigger deals. So I think that oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we think about the expenses and not about the profit sometimes. And as an investor, you have to think about the return on investment, not just the investment. Mm-hmm. So paying somebody, an employee, to do certain things gives you more time and freedom to do better things and work on your business.
Yeah,
right?
Because then you can focus on different things, right?
Exactly.
Because time is key. Exactly.
And then it works just as well with other investors. So if I know I have 20K, you have 20K, someone else has 20K, that's 60,000 right there.
Yeah.
And now you can use that to now go after an apartment complex as opposed to just a smaller
single
unit.
Family.
Right, exactly. So it gives you the opportunity to work on bigger deals. And when you're doing smaller deals, let's say you have like a 10 unit, usually a property manager is not on site, right? Mm-hmm. It's not really ran like a business. But then if you have like a 50 unit, 200 unit, there's usually a leasing office. Mm-hmm. That's not it's usually a third-party leasing office but it's on site.
Yeah.
So it's really ran more like a business. So now that money is more cash, it's more passive than it is if you had your own apartment complexes and you're dealing with the tenants yourself and things like that. And you feel like, hey, I got 100% of this entire thing, but
Your time. And you said something interesting, because a lot of people think that real estate is passive income, and it's not until you get to a certain point.
Exactly.
You were talking about it. If you have a single family home, you're probably going to be doing 99.9% of the work. So if you're thinking of passive income with one single family home, it's not the case.
Exactly.
If you start to get into multifamilies, like you said, even though you do have multiple people in one unit, and you may have a property manager, you're still going to have to answer the calls.
Exactly.
No matter what.
Exactly.
And it's not until you get into the space where you do have let's say a 20 unit, 25 or 50 unit, where you can have a leasing office, on the complex. They can go there, they can handle leases, get people in, out, handle all the maintenance and things like that. And that's when it's really passive. But in the meantime, it's partially passive, right?
So I would say it's residual. I like to say
Definitely,
residual.
yeah.
So you have, money that's coming in and you know it's coming in, but you still have responsibilities to get that residual. So it's literally just like a job.
Yeah.
Like you have a certain amount of to-dos in your job in order to get your 2-week paycheck. And that's pretty much the same thing with residual income versus passive. It doesn't matter. I'm getting my money regardless. It doesn't matter what happens. I could be sleeping. I could decide to not do anything at all. So yeah, definitely. And I think active and passive is important to do both.
Yes.
I think sometimes people romanticize passive, but it is important to work on your passive as you're working on your active.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes working on your active, like having a day job, right? Or having like a main hustle that you do, can fund that side hustle.
Exactly.
Which can bring you in some passive income in the long run.
Exactly. Definitely, man.
Yeah. So you mentioned wholesaling. And so I know about wholesaling,
Yeah.
But the viewers or the listeners out there might not know the specifics around wholesaling, even though it's a super popular topic in the real estate
Yeah.
space. So can you explain what wholesaling means and how you got into the wholesaling space, and maybe your first deal as well?
Yeah, so wholesaling was my first thing that I did, 100%. And that's, so wholesaling is basically when you find a property that's undervalued, and let's say it needs some work of some sort. So we have a term called ARV, average retail value. And that basically is just the HGTV, all fixed up retail, what you actually want to buy when you newlywed. Into a property, not a fixer-upper, right? Yep. So that's the retail. So let's say that in the area you have ARV. Just to make it simple, the ARV is 100,000. So houses in the area, retail is being sold for 100,000. So I know you, a landlord, is buying properties in that area. Let's say 70% of that ARV minus the repairs. So if it's 70%, you got 70%, and let's say the house needs 20K in repairs. So now I know that you will buy it for 50,000, right? Yep. So I go and find a property. I say, Mr. Seller, I'm buying properties in your area. How much do you need for the property? They say, I need 45 or 40 or something like that. I can do 35. I can do maybe, I can do 35. How about we settle on 40? So now we're at 40, right? And I know that you'll buy it at 50. So I take you to the property. In the contract, it says that I have the right to assign my rights to an end buyer. And that's the key, is being able to assign.
Contract.
Yeah. So in all 50 states, except for Illinois, you're not allowed to wholesale anymore. But in all 50 states, you can assign your rights. And it is not just a purchase and sale contract. It's any contract. You can assign your rights. So if I know that you're buying it for 50, I'll come and show you the property. And then when you put a property on a contract through purchase and sale, you usually have 30 days to close. It's not like we put it on a contract, I give you the money, and it's that same day. It's usually you wait 30 days for financing, inspection, things like appraisal. So you have time to market the property, basically. So in the contract, you say, hey, I'm going to have my partners, my contractors, inspectors come and look at the property. So in that meantime, you're having your contractors to see how much the work it needs to be done. So that's why I know it's 20K. And then I'm also having my buyers come looking at it. I'm telling them to bring their contractors. And we settle at 50. And now because I had it on a contract for 40, I make that spread of 10K.
At closing.
So I never purchased the property. I never
put any money up front.
Exactly.
It's all time and sweat equity.
Exactly. So it's a hustle. It's a hustle. It's a lot like being a realtor, even though you're not a realtor. You
don't need any type of license.
You don't need a license. However, what I love about wholesaling is taught me to find direct seller leads. And when you find direct seller leads, you're able to
explain what a direct seller lead is.
So when you when you buy a property, you buy it from a realtor or a broker, through that has a license, and they go out and you go to open houses, or they do go on different tours to different houses. And then you have to make your offer to the realtor, and the realtor presents the offer to the seller, right? And usually, because of that middleman, it's a little bit of a friction. The realtor usually has self-interest because they get paid based on the commission of how much the sale is.
So they want the highest
They want
price.
the highest.
Yes.
Investors, we make our money on the purchase. We want to be able to get...
You want to pay the lowest.
Pay the lowest, because when we sell it, that's how we make our profit. So we make our money on profit. Realtors make their money on commission. So a lot of times we're just we don't have the same motive. We don't have the same interest. So that can be an issue sometimes. And then just really as a salesperson, just not even just in real estate, but salesperson, you want to talk to the decision maker usually.
Final decision maker.
Exactly. And if you can talk to the decision maker, you're able to really find out what they really want. Ask the questions that maybe a realtor wouldn't ask.
Yep.
Maybe a realtor isn't as savvy as those things. And I'm not downing realtors. There's great realtors out there. However, the majority of realtors usually are part-timers. They have a full-time job, and then they're a realtor on the side. And a lot of times, they don't really have all of the knowledge and skills to really close deals like that.
Within that 30-day period, like you were talking about.
Right, exactly. So if you can find sellers direct, you're able to negotiate better terms based on what you want, not just what the realtor's commission, things like that. Not to, realtors can bring great deals, but it's just a wedge that sometimes can make it a little bit harder to close. So the reason why I really, really like talking direct to sellers is because I really like creative financing. So you have things like owner financing, subject tos, lease options. And I teach a lot of these strategies as well as wholesaling on, I have another business where we consult, teach people investing, theboondy.com.
Okay.
Theboondy.com. So
yeah, for all the viewers, listeners out there, theboondy.com, he actually will go into depth and detail about this. Since it's, high level, I don't want him to give away too much information.
I came up with theboondy.com because it means wisdom in Swahili.
Okay.
And it was just one of those, I really like the name, and I have a huge plan with that whole platform. But for right now, the things that's on it mostly is real estate investing, and we talk about wholesale, and we talk about owner financing, subject tos, lease option, and those three that I mentioned. Outside of wholesaling, or the creative way. So you're able to buy properties through a payment over time structure as opposed to having to go qualify for the bank. So
exactly. And when you're doing that, you don't have to have perfect credit.
Exactly.
You don't have to have all the money up front.
Exactly.
Right. You can kind of make your own contract, right? You can say exactly how much you want to pay. It doesn't have to be a certain rate or a mortgage or things like that, right? You can set up pretty much an agreement with whoever the seller is. You can say, hey, I'm willing to pay you $50 or let's say $500 over the course of, let's say, a year or 3 years. And then at the end of that 3 years, I'll pay you the rest of the balance.
Exactly.
You can do things like that with creative financing that you don't have to go to a bank or a mortgage broker for, correct?
Exactly. And what you described is paying them like a balloon payment at the end,
Yep.
Now in Baltimore, in certain areas where prices, maybe a house is worth $30,000, $40,000, $100,000, you don't have to do a balloon payment, and they'll be okay with that, and they won't outlive that note,
Yeah,
So
exactly.
sometimes people they don't want to do it because I won't live that long.
Maybe you can say $5,000 up front or something.
Right,
like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So if it's like a house that is where the purchase price would be way more than what their life expectancy, then what you can do is just do like what you said, is a balloon payment and pay them at the end, which gives you time to
come up with the money, repair your credit, do everything you need to do to get that financing ready to go.
Get some credit partners.
Or even fix it up and be prepared to sell it.
And prepare to sell, exactly. But regardless, you have to pay back that balloon payment.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I mean, most of my properties, the first ones that I purchased, were all creatively financed. A lot of times, no money down, no down payment, things like that. And you don't get those type of deals usually with a realtor.
Yeah.
They hear owner financing, the first thing they're wondering is, how am I going to get paid?
Exactly.
So wholesaling really teaches you how to find those deals, and you can wholesale some, but I teach to get the equity, buy properties, because that's really where the wealth is. And wholesaling gets you cash to buy more properties, But at the end of the day, the plan should be to buy properties.
Exactly. Yeah, to build those assets.
Exactly.
Okay. And so now I do want to talk about something for our generation. We're both 28 years old, right? So talk a little bit about investment real estate, because this seems to be like a super hot topic for millennials, right? When they're thinking about, I'm getting out of college, I'm starting my career, I want to purchase a home. Would you recommend that they purchase a single family home, and it's something that may be like a 2 or 3 bedroom, right? And they just live in it, and then they use that as a starter home? Or do you recommend that they purchase something like a 4-unit or a 3-unit, maybe even a duplex, when they're first starting out, as a starter home, rather than something that they may not be able to afford and they know they're going to upgrade?
Everyone's situation is different.
Yeah.
That's really important to understand. So for me to say 4-unit or single family, really, it's a lot of variables in play, like the market, what their goals are, what their intentions are. So, if it was me, I will go after the 4-unit. However, I will say that single family is easier to sell.
They are very
easier to sell.
Yeah, I have too. So, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Selling, marketing, it makes the whole process easier, right? Because they don't have to deal with other tenants, other contracts, other leases, right?
Exactly. So it really depends. So you have 4 units. Cash flow is always better with a 4-unit.
Correct.
However, depending on the market, like Baltimore, people in Baltimore don't really like to be in an apartment unless it's a really nice luxury apartment, or a 50-unit apartment or 20-unit apartment, because they don't want to feel like they can hear their neighbors, things like that. So when you're dealing with the smaller 4 units, 5 units, the turnover rate, and when I say turnover, I mean how quickly people are coming in and out of the property.
Yep.
Because you want long-lasting tenants that stay for a long time. Some of my mentors who've had 30 properties, things like that, a lot of their single-family units, their tenants have been there for 30 years, 20 years. Apartment complex, 4 units.
And those are the best investments.
Yes.
When you have people that pay on time, even if it's a little bit below market value, but they're paying on time every month and they live there for 3 years.
Exactly.
5 years, right?
Exactly. So, I love multifamily, and I do think that they're better than single family for me.
Yeah.
However, single family does have its advantages, and I don't want to just just cast them away, because they do have their advantages. However, I do personally believe that it takes a team. Because not everybody should be an investor, but everybody shouldn't be the investor, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you're good at digital marketing and you love that, and that's your job, and you love doing it, if you're a lawyer and that's what you love to do, making cold calls to talk to sellers and trying to find deals may not be your best. But working with somebody, and not just me, but there's other people out there. You got Jay Morrison, you got Grant Cardone. Yep. You have other people in your local market that maybe you want to meet more so, and say, look, go out there, find deals for me, and I'll be a part of your fund. I'll be a part of the business that buys that property. There's so many different ways that you can structure the deal when it's multiple people, but it works. It's more advantageous in your favor to work as a team.
Yeah. And I want you to talk about a little bit more about having a team, right? Because you were saying that you can be an investor in a fund. Let's say a group of 5 people, all of your friends, right? And you just have a job. You have a 9 to 5, but you do want to start venturing out into some of those investments, right? You can do that, right? And you can have a realtor on the side who's in your group as well, or you can have another investor who's in your group. Talk about building that core team of people that you can trust to go out and do these deals.
Yeah, so a really, really good book. I mean, just about any Gary Keller book is good.
Okay.
I love Gary Keller, the owner of Keller Williams. But a really good book to read is Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller.
Okay.
And he talks a lot about the different teams that you can add. So I would say get a couple of wholesalers. Wholesalers are great. And the thing about real estate, one thing I really love about real estate is that your competition becomes your partners a lot of the times. And that doesn't happen in any sector. Like if I have a salon or a barbershop or whatever, the barbershop across the street is technically in competition with me.
Exactly.
Right? We're not going to go hang out at a meetup and talk about how we bring more customers. Yeah. But real estate, you can do that. So that's the beautiful things behind that. So when you're building your team, you can have wholesalers, you can have realtors, other investors, and a title company.
Lawyers.
It could be a lawyer,
yeah.
Because usually lawyers and title companies work hand in hand.
Yep.
Because it's usually a lawyer that's attached to a title company. But you can have a lawyer that actually closes your deals as opposed to just a title company, and it can work better in your favor if
you can save a little bit of money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So having relationships is the biggest part. It's the biggest part, and cultivating those relationships. But a wholesaler, off-market deals that understands investing, not just, a realtor that has access to MLS, has access to a lot of these different avenues. MLS is where they list your properties, and having access to that is just huge. And when you have access to MLS, it's easier to figure out how much that property is worth.
Exactly,
right?
Because then you can do the radius. Is it like a half a mile, sometimes a mile?
So every market is different. Some people get caught up in that because they do the half a mile thing. And if you're in an area that's block by block, like Baltimore, that can mess you up.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but that's a whole nother that's a whole nother thing. But essentially yes, you go on the MLS and you find properties that's in the area to find out what other areas, like I was talking about before, what the ARV is, to see how much houses are selling for in the area, and in that way you can figure out how much you can sell it for, how much you should be buying it for, things like that, how much equity you have.
Yes.
You want to explain what equity is, bro, just in case people don't know?
Yeah. And so equity means, let's say the price of a home is $100,000, right? And most people will get a loan for that home, right? So that means you have a mortgage of $100,000. 99% of the time, a bank's not going to give you 100% of the value of that home. So you would have to put down some type of down payment. And the down payment means you put up money up front that pretty much purchases that home. So let's say you put down $10,000, 10% of the value of the home. That means you have a 10% equity ownership stake in that particular asset. And so most banks, it depends on the type of loan, but you can get a FHA, which is I think 3.5%. You can do conventional, which is 5%. You have some loans that are 10%, or you can do investor loans, which are sometimes 20 to 25%.
Yep.
And so there are pros and cons to all of those different types of loans. But if you put down, I think at least 20 to 25%, you don't have to pay PMI, which is mortgage insurance. And you never want to pay mortgage insurance because you're pretty much just paying the insurance for the bank. And that's if you default on that mortgage, right? So I would say you should always try to put down as much as you can afford, right, in your budget to actually get that equity. Because if you have that equity and you start to build it over time through paying down the mortgage or through the down payment that you put down, then you can start to pull out some of that equity if you need to in the future.
Exactly. And, that usually happens when you have, best credit. So work on your credit.
Exactly.
You can invest with no credit and no money, but credit and money gives you more leverage to buy more deals.
Exactly.
So don't romanticize that.
Exactly. So, and I would say the best combination of a real estate investor is a person who uses creative financing along with off-market deals and some type of, cash fund that they have to go out and find these properties. Because if you're offering cash up front, you have some type of creative financing and you're doing the deals off-market before they hit the MLS, that's when you're going to find the best deals.
Exactly, man. I mean, to really, what I like to say as far as equity is, it's really how much your house is worth minus how much is owed, and then that equals the equity.
Yes,
that's like the simplest way for people to really understand. And but whatever that equity is, you can get that money back from the bank borrowed. But you have to have good credit. Definitely.
Okay, so now getting back into it, I saw something on your IG about the argument of time versus money. And something that I got from that was you can always get your money back, but you can never get your time back.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think that it's not just investing, but it's philosophy in itself. I think that oftentimes people make plans like they have forever to live.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest issue that we have as a society in the world, is that we think in terms of, one day I'll do this, one day I'll do that. And 20 years ago you said that,
Yeah.
I know people who've been reaching out to me, coming to me and say, hey, I want to get started in real estate. I want to invest. I want to do this. I want to do that. And 10 years later, they still saying the same thing.
Exactly.
Literally the exact, hey, man, I've been watching you for a while, and you've been watching me for 10 years, man. So I don't think people realize how quick that goes. There's this comedian, Dion Cole, and it's funny, but it's true. I love comedy that really makes you think, because Dion Cole talks a lot about, in the show, he talked about how you have a certain amount of summers left, right? The average life expectancy for men is 78. I'm 28, right? You're 28.
Yep.
People say we're young, right? Oh, you have forever. You're young. We have 50 years left.
Yeah.
That's 50 years. That's not that much. And 10 years went by like that. And to me, kind of. Like,
from high school to now, like
exactly.
That's 10 years.
And I feel like, it didn't feel like that long ago we were in high school.
Exactly.
So we have 5 more of those experiences left. So I think that's the biggest thing that you got to remember, that you don't get time back. You can make money back.
Yeah, always. You
can get your energy back. Energy is another finite resource that I don't think people pay attention to, but you can restore it. You can get it back, right? You can repair back credit. Credit is another thing you can really repair. It can always comes back, but you'll never get time back. And I think that a lot of times people are afraid of losing money. They're afraid of wasting energy, and then they're afraid of messing up their credit.
Yeah.
People die. People work so hard to get an 800 credit score and then die with an 800 credit score, not doing anything with it.
And money in the bank that they can't use, right?
So I think, the biggest thing is just to realize, the Greek philosophy talked about this thing called the Stoics. The Stoics believe, just remember that you die, carpe diem, There's all these different philosophies that just remind you that, hey, one day you're going to die. And I think it's an uncomfortable conversation, so we don't talk about it.
But it's the reality.
And that's why people like me who buy businesses can buy businesses. People say, well, how are you able to buy a business that is generating income? Why don't they just sell it? Why don't they just give it to their kids? Because they never planned for it. People don't talk about death. They never talk about their succession plan.
The exit strategy.
Exactly.
Yep.
And people just plan. They do things like they just have forever to live. You ever notice whenever someone dies, oh man, we don't talk anymore. It's been so long. Like, why does it take a death in the family for us to all get together? Because people don't think that one day someone's gonna die. You won't see them tomorrow.
Yeah.
So maybe say some of the things that you wanted to say. Maybe, apologize for certain things. Make the certain memories you want to make. I know it's a little bit off of investing, but I think that's why we invest.
That is why we invest.
Right? Yeah. So if it's for time, spend your time wisely. And don't just give it away so easily.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
I'm passionate about time, bro.
I like that. I like that. You should be, right? Because, there's only so much time, right?
Yeah.
Anything could happen, and like you were saying. But on the topic of time and family, let's talk about generational wealth.
Love it.
So if you were to design a plan for someone to create wealth, and I'm not talking about just personal wealth, I'm talking about generational wealth.
Yes.
What would that plan look like?
So, number one, we have to remember that on average, generational wealth is lost in 3 years, in 3 generations, right?
Yes, by the third.
By the third, yeah. So we have to understand that. There's a really good book called Family Fortune. It's by, they're from Maryland too. Bill Burner and Bill Burner Jr., I believe.
Okay.
Bonner. And they talk a lot about making a 100-year plan. They also talk about self-directed IRA.
Yeah.
I talk about that a lot. You can go to Equity Trust, and Equity Trust has a ton of information. They're one of my partners, and they help you get your IRA started, 401k. Let me just expound on that for a second.
Definitely.
So 401k, IRA, you guys know, I'm sure everyone knows what 401k is. If you don't, it's a retirement account. A lot of times your employer hooks you up with it. So a self-directed IRA, let me back up. 401k, you usually have somebody like maybe yourself that makes the decisions for what stocks to purchase and things like that.
Yep.
And so you don't really have any control, right? And self-directed means you actually have the control. You control your own investments. So you can go out and buy your own stocks. And
doesn't have to be just stocks.
It doesn't have to be just stocks. It can be real estate. It could also be businesses.
Yep.
You can also lend money. I think you can invest in public. Don't quote me on that. I don't know I feel like you might not be able to invest in public companies.
I would definitely say if you're looking for something about self-directed IRAs, this is a huge topic that everyone should know about.
Yes.
Definitely do your research. But you can, usually like you were saying with the 401k, you have a listing of 20 different funds that you can put your money in. So you kind of have some say, but it's not really. Like, they're giving you a set list and you pick from that list.
Right.
Some are good, some are bad. You really don't have a choice, and they all charge fees.
Right.
Versus a self-directed IRA, you can invest in single stocks, bonds, CDs, companies, real estate, right? And you can use all that to fund your eventual retirement or to pass that on.
And the beautiful thing about it is it's tax-free.
Yeah.
It's tax-free, so you don't get taxed. And self-directed Roth IRA is my favorite. You know, consult your financial advisor. However, these things, because these are all in that realm of financial advisory, but Roth IRA, self-directed Roth IRA, I don't even think it's going to be like legal like 20 years from now, like, because there's just so much money that the government is just losing out on.
Yeah, because you're putting in after-tax funds, and everything is tax deferred.
Exactly.
All the gains.
Exactly. So that's what I think you should do individually, is have make sure that you set up your retirement plan, and I would say do it in a self-directed IRA, and I would say invest not just with a you know, like in mutual funds, EFTs and things like that with your like financial advisor and whatnot, but also reach out to fund managers like myself, like Grant Cardone, like Jay Morrison, like all these other people.
Yep.
Reach out to them, invest in multiple funds.
Exactly.
Right?
Spread out your money, diversify.
Exactly. And the thing that, like, why I like dealing with those things is because you're usually in alignment with your investors. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you just have like a 401k and somebody's just picking those investments for you, they're doing transaction fees, maintenance fees,
asset under management fees.
Yeah. So when the economy is bad and your thing is not performing well, you don't see the fees when you're making money.
Nope.
But when you're losing money, you're like, whoa, I'm paying this guy However, when you're investing with like my company, when I get paid, you get paid. When I get rent, you get rent. Mm-hmm. So our interests are aligned. So I think that the biggest thing is to diversify, like you said, and to make sure that you have some control over your retirement. So having a self-directed IRA is huge. So that's number one, right?
Yep.
Number two, I would say have a trust. Now,
definitely,
this is something that takes family cooperation.
It does.
And it's not always easy with that, right? Sometimes it may just have to be you and your significant other and your kids, mm-hmm. right? But you have a trust. You make a 100-year plan, literally a business plan for 100 years. Mm-hmm. Figure out how to do that. And then find whatever you want to invest in, whether it's startups, whether it's existing businesses, whether it's a specific business, right? Mm-hmm. Family Fortune talks a lot about finding businesses that people don't think are sexy. It's a little dirty, like porta potties. You know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head.
Or ATMs, or like a dry cleaner.
Exactly. So something that's kind of under the radar, that's really up and coming, and then your family starts in that, and then they start with a family trust, and the trust works a lot like, a little fun fact. A self-directed IRA 401k is literally a trust. Those are all trusts. Yep. So it works the same, and trust a lot of times businesses use it really just to protect themselves from being sued, mm-hmm. And not having all their assets in an LLC, because the more protection you have, because usually the beneficiary, bro, this is getting too deep. The beneficiary is the person who gets the money from the trust.
The trust fund. Essentially, I know people have heard the term trust fund, but what we're talking about is the root of it, the actual trust, where the funds come from.
Exactly.
Yep.
So the beneficiary is the one that actually gets the money, gets mm-hmm. the benefits, the beneficiary, right? Hence the word. The way we do it in my company was that the LLC, and my mentors taught me I have an LLC, and the LLC is the beneficiary. So that's literally two barriers
from you personally.
Yeah, exactly. So if someone, God forbid, decides to sue me, they have to get through the trust and they have to get through the LLC, mm-hmm. right? Not just the trust, not just the LLC. And then you have, usually there might be 4 different, what do you call these people? Trustees, 4 different trustees, and they're technically the ones in control. So you have to pick the right trustees, and that's why it works really good in a family dynamic, because hopefully you can trust your family.
A set of brothers, or like your spouse, or something like that. Yeah.
So the best story that came from this whole idea that was talked about in Family Fortune, it was talked about in the Founding Father, talking about Kennedys and things like that, was the Rothschild. So the Rothschild, I forget the name of the founding father of the Rothschild, but he had 5 sons, mm-hmm. and unfortunately, they didn't talk about the daughters, because back then it was just like male dominated, And he spread out all 5 of his sons
around the world
to
become bankers, financiers.
Exactly.
Yep.
And around this time, there was like a depression and all these different things. And only one of them actually was successful.
And
4 of them were.
And why is that?
What? I can't remember.
Because he was loaning out funds.
Right.
He was loaning out his funds instead of spending it and investing in failing businesses.
Yes. Because lending, you're getting that interest, and it's right. Exactly.
Yep.
So what they did is that they had monthly or weekly meetings on a regular basis. So the person who did successful, he shared the story with the rest of the group, and now that group is now working together, and now Rothschilds is like one of the richest families in the world,
exactly.
Right? And it all started with that. It talked a lot. He talked a lot about not just the business side of it, because we're just talking about the business side, but there's a lot other stuff like family. Unity, like having a flag, or
crest, or like values.
Exactly, certain values, a mission statement, things like that. Things to where it really helps the family. Investing in a family therapist, right? So there's all different types of things that you can do. That's really just like company management.
Yeah.
Like, these are the things that CEOs use
to bring everyone together, right?
Exactly.
Because sometimes, even though people think of it as a family, it's a unit.
Exactly.
It should be a team. You can run it like a team or a company, right? And it should be run like that, right? You should have a certain set of values that you live by. You should be able to invest in certain things that'll help you guys grow and learn in the future, right? But you talked about something, and you said the group, the weekly meeting, the monthly meeting. And I think about that as a sort of mastermind group.
Exactly.
Right? And I have one of those personally, right? Where I have a weekly meeting where I just meet with a couple of buddies that I have, and we talk about everything. We talk about personal finance, financial literacy, savings, investing, entrepreneurship, new deals, personal life, right? If someone has a question about anything, they can ask the question in an open forum. And I think those things are helping everyone become better, because if you share your story, 9 times out of 10, someone in that group has probably either gone through the same thing or going through it. So you can have, you can put out your knowledge there, or they can give you some knowledge as well. And that's a good way to progress and learn personally.
It's powerful, man. Masterminds are powerful. They talk about it in the Bible. They talk about it in Think and Grow Rich. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, because when you have multiple people from different experiences, different backgrounds, different strengths come together, and now you're like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah. Using someone else's experience
exactly
to progress you, so you don't have to go through 10 years learning a certain thing.
So I think the biggest thing that has always been the aha moment for me, and I think that the biggest thing that will help everybody is to realize that you can't do it by yourself. It's a team effort, teamwork. All of the things that we're talking about literally is teamwork.
Yep.
Your favorite comedian, your favorite basketball player, your favorite artist all have teams that help them put these things together. You have a team.
And you may not ever see them, but they have a team behind them, getting them to where they are.
Exactly. So, and a lot of times too, I would say that all these, like I may be the leader, you may be the leader, but let's not get it twisted. This is just a position.
Exactly.
It's about the team as a whole, and I think that we have to keep remember that. CEOs get fired all the time, especially once they get to a certain a certain status, and we have to remember for anything exactly. So you got to understand your position. Everybody needs to understand the position, play accordingly, and give your all and work as a team. Because when you work as a team, you go farther. You just go farther. What's the African proverb?
If you want to go fast, you go by yourself. If you want to go farther, you go together.
I love how quick you are with that, bro.
Definitely, man.
Yeah. That's it in a nutshell, man. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Definitely. And so, since you are a business owner and you have a fund, I want you to explain that to the people a little bit, for people that might be interested in doing some things that you're talking about.
Yeah. So go to colsonenterprises.net. colsonenterprises.net, and you can just set up a call. You can do either set up a consultation call with either me or one of my employees, and then we just walk you through exactly how to set up the self-directed IRA, how to set up your LLC, things like that, and how we can work together, and we'll start showing you some of the deals that we're working on.
Okay. And so now we know you're an investor, heavy investor, right? Now, do you save or budget?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I would say that I save with a purpose, right? I always tell people, don't just save, right? It's kind of like credit. People have good credit, they don't use it, right? People have a savings, it's not earning no interest or anything like that. They're not lending it. So always save with a purpose. Save to invest. Save to lend, save to invest. But saving in itself, you're actually losing money with inflation. So I know Robert Kiyosaki, which I'm a huge fan of, said savers are losers. And I think that a lot of people didn't really understand what he meant by that. And so just understand that you have to save with a purpose. But yes, I save every day.
Okay. And when you're going through that process of saving, like what are things that you're saving for?
Investments, man. Investing, other properties that I'm working on. So a lot of times, being liquid is something that you have to think about. So when you have that certain amount of cash flow coming in, it's really easy to spend it all, honestly. It really is easy to spend it all. And we have to really realize that just because you have 20K doesn't mean that you're rich. 60K, you're broke, right?
Yeah.
But
if you have $1 million, in some cases, like depending on the circle that you're around or the things that you want to do, that can be considered a small amount of money.
Yes, definitely. Because there's only so much you can do with it. And like time, like we said with time, if that's how much you think you're going to use in a lifetime, think again, right? Yeah. So you really want to plan for investments because you want to be ready when an investment comes. And you want to be ready on all fronts. When I first started, I didn't have, I wasn't liquid, didn't have credit. So I wanted to finance and I wholesaled. And there was a lot of deals that I kind of missed out on that I couldn't do because I didn't have the money, I didn't have the investors, I didn't have the credit.
And even if you try to do everything else, there's only so much you can do when you're doing creative financing, or you just don't have that credit, right?
Exactly. So one of my favorite mantras when it comes with saving, which I read in Richest Man in Babylon, is a part of everything I earn is mine to keep.
Exactly.
So every time you earn money, literally put a part of it away for yourself. And if you're not paying yourself first, then, what are you really working for?
I love that book. And when I was reading it, and I think this is a great quote. Like you said, pay yourself first. That should be number one. No matter what, if you make money, pay yourself first. And this has to be intentional, right? Put it into a savings account or an investment account, or put it somewhere where you know that, okay, this is the first thing I'm going to do with my money, right? And people can do that by automating their savings or things like that. The second thing he said was use a portion of it also to pay off debt. And that should be a dedicated portion to pay off things like credit cards, student loans, anything you have outstanding, that should be it. But it shouldn't be over that. If you can't afford more than that, you shouldn't have the debt. You should talk to the debtors and, try to come to an agreement.
Yeah.
But he said a lot of people get into the process of, okay, I just got my check, I'm going to use it all for debt. Sometimes that's not the best option. Sometimes you should only take, let's say, 20% or 25% to use that towards your debt and save the other amount, because then you can actually build up some type of funds to actually, combat that.
Exactly. I had when I started working on my credit, I literally had like a credit mentor, Rhonda. They call her the credit queen. Reach out to her, Rhonda Brunson. We have an event coming up soon, so
where's the event?
It's in Baltimore, in the Owens Mills. If you go on my Instagram, you can see it. But what she told me was that communicate with your creditors. Communicate with your creditors. That's the biggest thing. Like when you say that you owe money, it's your word that you're talking about. Yeah. And your credit is a reflection of your word. The Richest Man in Babylon talks about this. This is your word. So if you say that you're gonna pay or you're gonna pay back somebody, you have to, if you can't or you don't have everything at that very moment, it is okay. You're not a bad person. What makes you a bad person is not communicating.
Yes.
And not talking to them and not saying, hey, like, this is what I can do. Can we work out some type of plan?
Yeah, I can't pay you $500, but I can pay you $100 for 5 weeks straight.
Exactly. And I mean, they may get mad. They may be like, no, I want all my money. That's fine. I'll pay you when I have it. But, here's what I can do, right? Yeah. So it's important to understand that this is your word and you have to pay people back, especially when you're doing things like investing and things like that. Your word is literally your bond. And in real estate, we don't, like I said, a house is a house is a house, or a property is a property is a property. You never have a product that's better than someone else. And if you do, it's a short period of time when you have it, right?
Exactly.
So everybody has the same thing that you have. The only difference is really your reputation. So you really have to protect that and make sure that, your word is your bond. I think the biggest thing in business that people tend to always do is that they overpromise and then they underdeliver. And you have to underpromise and overdeliver. And when you do that,
time again.
and that's what helps your reputation, is when you underpromise, maybe, and then when it comes time, go above and beyond. You're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that because I didn't set your expectation this high.
Exactly.
I set your expectations here, but I went above it.
And when you can continually beat those expectations that you originally set, people are going to look to you. Exactly. Right? Anytime they think about a real estate deal or they're thinking about a self-directed IRA, they're going to think about the person that told me they were going to do one thing and did twice as much.
Exactly.
Every single time that I've reached out to them, right?
Exactly.
I do want to talk about one thing. How do you go about setting your goals for yourself?
So when I started buying businesses, my mentor who taught me that really showed me how to look at profit and loss statements. I mean, I was one of those, as an investor, believe it or not, I was an investor buying properties, and a lot of investors don't know how to read P&Ls that buy properties.
Actual P&Ls.
Yeah, actual P&Ls. You have to know how to look at an income, minus it times the expenses, see what your cash, things like that. So I really learned how to do that. Look at balance sheets and things like that. And that's how you're able to buy not just commercial properties, but businesses, especially businesses. So that is not just for purchasing, it's also for projecting and things like that. And when you're projecting, you're literally making your goals. So when you say, hey, this week, I think I can sell this amount of sales. I think the team can do this amount of calls. So now when we have our meetings and I'm talking to my cold callers, I have a direct single goal that I want them to do for that week, and it's associated with that quarter and things like that, and it's all based on the P&Ls, and it's kind of realistic goals because it's based on the past, right? Yeah. So I really look at the weekly P&Ls. I break it down by week, and then each week I look at the P&Ls and I say, okay, this is the amount of calls, because usually a sale is based on a conversion rate through marketing, right? Or how many calls do you make to get a certain amount of yeses? How many yeses does it make to put a certain amount on the contract? How many on the contract actually close, right?
And so that can be like, let's say you make 100 calls, you get 100 people or 10 people to say yes out of that 100. Out of that 10, then you get 3 things under contract and 1 might close.
Exactly.
And that could be what you do in a week.
Exactly. So you have to figure out how many calls am I supposed to make per week to get to that formula.
Yep.
And then that's how but you based it on the past and your P&L. So now you literally have a formula. Okay, now if I hire someone else, they can do this amount of work. Oh, I can hire someone, this can do this.
So you know exactly what to expect.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, as much as possible. I mean, these are all numbers, but it's usually it's the formula. It's literally like a math equation. It's a beautiful thing.
Okay. And what are some of your personal goals for 2020? And then also talk about your 5-year plan a little bit.
So I want to help my family. My family become we're working on some investments through the family. I almost feel like I shouldn't talk about it. I really feel like we should not. I got my cousin there. Yeah, so it's actually some secret. It's a secret. But personally, we have as far as we're working on buying. So we're working on a facility maintenance company.
Okay.
Some of our goals are kind of like secret, and that's why we have our investors sign NDAs.
Yep.
So one of our goals for private equity is to have a facility maintenance company. So we're buying security companies, landscaping companies, things like that, and then we're going to have a facility maintenance company, and then eventually sell it on the public market. Another one is we're working on syndicating apartment complexes. We have a couple of self-storages that we look. So we invest in 3 different asset classes in real estate: self-storages, mobile home parks, and apartment complexes. So yeah, we're looking to buy more of those and to do business acquisition.
Okay, and what about your 5-year plan?
5-year plan. It's the same. It's the same, man. I mean, and it's like private. It's kind of private.
Right, so we won't have to get into that.
Yeah.
But I do want to give you a chance before we get out of here to get off some of your social medias or some of the things that you have going as well.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on Instagram at Colson090. Colson090. It was the same as my AIM a while back, back when we have Instant Messenger. And you can find me on Facebook at Eddie Colson. Pretty easy, Eddie Colson. You can reach out to my fund, my real estate fund, at colsonenterprises.net. Yep. I have some really, really cool inspirational merchandise. I gave my man one of the cups, one of the mugs. So it is at ambitiousfew.co, ambitiousfew.co for the ambitious, for your inspiration, right? And we also have the Boondy, where you can come and learn a lot about real estate investing and how to get started with no money down. And I really started that company because I knew that there was a lot of people out there that just didn't have any money like me. I mean, making $7,500 a year. And, when it comes with starting with no money and, just even investing in marketing. Mm-hmm. So I talk a lot about just how to really find deals, literally absolutely no money. Because when they have a lot of these courses, sometimes they say, you need no money, but then they say, but you got to spend $1,000 a month on mailers and this type of marketing, that type of marketing. And I didn't have that, so I really had to create, be creative and figured it all out. So I made that for those people that really just have no money and really looking to get started with that little bit that they have. So
okay,
for the people.
All right, perfect. So Eddie Colson, colleague of mine, YouTuber, Instagrammer. Thank you for being on Money Talks, the podcast.
Of course,
I appreciate it, man.